I was in advanced thermodynamics when my phone vibrated. Mom's name. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it vibrated again. And again. By the fourth call, Professor Mitchell paused mid-equation and looked at me. I mouthed sorry and stepped into the hallway. Catherine. Mom's voice had that edge, the one she used when she'd already decided something and expected compliance. I've withdrawn you from school. You need to come home immediately. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Students passed, backpacks heavy with textbooks. Someone laughed about an exam. Normal campus sounds that suddenly felt very far away. What are you talking about? Your brother needs help with his new business. Real family support, not this selfish academic fantasy you're living. I've already submitted the withdrawal forms to the registrar. You're done there. My hand tightened on the phone. You can't withdraw me. I'm 23 years old. I'm listed as your emergency contact. They were very accommodating when I explained you were having a mental health crisis and needed to come home for treatment. Her voice brightened, pleased with her own cleverness. Your father agrees this is best. Brandon's company needs someone to handle the bookkeeping, and frankly, you owe this family after everything we've invested in you. I closed my eyes. Counted to 3. Opened them. I'll call you back. Catherine, don't you dare. I ended the call and walked directly to the administration building. The autumn air was sharp, biting through my sweater. My breath came out in clouds. The Shaw Engineering Building rose to my left. 5 stories of glass and steel, completed 18 months ago. My grandmother's legacy. My responsibility. The registrar's office had that institutional smell, old paper and industrial carpet. The student worker at the desk looked up with practiced customer service exhaustion. I need to speak with someone about withdrawal forms, I said. Someone may have submitted them fraudulently under my name. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Name. Catherine Marie Shaw. She went very still. Then she picked up the phone, pressed a button and spoke quietly. Mrs. Henderson? There's a situation. Catherine Shaw is here. 2 minutes later I was in a private office. Mrs. Henderson, the registrar, had silver hair and reading glasses on a chain. She folded her hands on the desk. Miss Shaw, your mother called an hour ago. Said you were experiencing severe depression and needed immediate withdrawal for psychiatric treatment. She submitted forms through the online portal. She has your login information, apparently. She doesn't have my login information. She can't have my login information. I'm over 18. She has no legal authority to access my academic records or make decisions about my enrollment. Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. That's what I thought. But she was very insistent and claimed she had medical power of attorney. She doesn't. My voice was flat, controlled. I'd like those forms destroyed. And I'd like to speak with whoever authorized accepting them. Of course. She made a note. Though I should mention, your mother is currently on hold with the dean's office. She called there when I told her I needed to verify the information before processing anything. That's when I heard it. Through the wall, muffled but distinct. My mother's voice rising in volume. The words weren't clear but the tone was demanding. Dialed. Used to getting her way. I stood. Where's the dean's office? Miss Shaw, perhaps we should. Please. Mrs. Henderson studied me for a long moment. Then she stood too. Follow me. We walked down the corridor. The dean's suite was behind double doors. Nicer carpet, better lighting, photos of distinguished alumni on the walls. The receptionist's desk sat empty, but through the open door of an inner office, I heard my mother clearly now. I don't care what your privacy policies are. I'm her mother. She's clearly having a breakdown and you people are enabling it by letting her waste her life on some engineering degree when her family needs her. The dean's assistant, a woman in her 50s with immaculate posture, held the phone slightly away from her ear. When she saw me in the doorway, her expression shifted, relief mixed with something else. Recognition maybe. She'd been at the building dedication ceremony. We'd shaken hands. She spoke into the phone, her voice professionally pleasant but with steel underneath. Ma'am, I need to stop you there. You're attempting to withdraw Catherine Shaw from the university. Yes, finally someone who... Miss Shaw is standing in front of me right now. The assistant's eyes met mine. She appears to be in excellent health. She's also our largest individual donor in the past decade. She personally endowed the Shaw Engineering Building, a $4.2 million gift from her grandmother's estate, which Ms. Shaw administered as trustee and specifically directed to this institution. The silence on the other end of the phone was absolute. The assistant continued, her tone never changing. Ms. Shaw has also established 3 full-ride engineering scholarships for first-generation college students, funds 2 research fellowships annually, and serves on our engineering advisory board. She graduated summa cum laude with her bachelor's degree and is currently pursuing her master's in mechanical engineering while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. I could hear my mother trying to speak, but the assistant wasn't finished. What you've attempted to do constitutes fraud, falsely claiming medical authority to make academic decisions for an adult student. I'm transferring you to our legal department now. They'll want to discuss the forged documents you submitted to our registrar. She pressed a button. The hold music started immediately, tinny, institutional. Then she hung up and looked at me. I apologize, Ms. Shaw. This should never have gotten this far. It's not your fault. My voice came out steadier than I expected. She's persistent. Mrs. Henderson, who'd followed me in, made a note on her tablet. I'll flag your account with the highest level of protection. No one can access or modify anything without your physical presence and photo ID. I'll also alert campus security to the situation. The assistant nodded. I'll brief Dean Morrison. She'll want to know about this. Thank you. I turned to leave, then stopped. Actually, could you give me the number for your legal department? I think I need to have a direct conversation with them about next steps. She wrote it on a card and handed it to me. Our fingers touched briefly. Hers were warm, grandmotherly almost. You've handled this with remarkable composure. I wasn't sure about that. My hands were shaking. But I'd learned something over the past 2 years since Grandma died and left me everything. Her estate, her trust in my judgment, her belief that I could do something meaningful with the gift she'd given me. Some people see money as control. Others see it as responsibility. Grandma saw it as freedom. The freedom to choose your own path. The freedom to say no. I walked back across campus. Called the legal department. Spent 40 minutes on the phone explaining the situation. They used words like identity fraud, and FERPA violation, and cease and desist letter. They said they'd handle it. That the university took these matters very seriously. Then I sat on a bench near the engineering building and finally let myself feel it. Not anger exactly. Something colder than that. Something that had been building for years. Every family dinner where Brandon's failed business ventures were bold risks. While my academic achievements were nice, but when are you getting a real job? Every time Mom borrowed money, just until Brandon's deal goes through, money that never came back. Every guilt trip about not being there for the family, as if proximity was the only measure of love. The ghost ledger of family expectations. A personal accounting. Line item 1. Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Brandon needed $15,000 for a sure-thing investment. I was in my senior year. Working part-time at the lab, managing Grandma's estate paperwork, studying for the GRE. Mom called it selfish when I said no. Cost. My confidence that saying no was allowed. Never recoverable. Line item 2. Summer internship at Boeing, turned down because family needs you home for Brandon's latest startup launch party. I served drinks while he pitched an app that never materialized. Cost. Professional opportunity, 3 months of advancement. Permanent career delay. Line item 3. Grandma's funeral. Brandon complained about the will in front of mourners. Mom said I should share the inheritance since Grandma didn't understand I'd wasted on education. Cost. The ability to grieve in peace. A memory contaminated forever. Line item 4. Every phone call that started with your brother needs and ended with my resources. Time, money, emotional labor, extracted like taxes. Cost. The years I spent believing that being capable meant being obligated. The years I thought love required depletion. The gambler's fallacy applies to families too. I kept thinking if I just proved myself enough, graduated with honors, got into the master's program, made smart decisions with Grandma's trust, they'd see me as something other than a resource to be mined. But they didn't want me to be successful. They wanted me to be useful. And those are different things entirely. My phone buzzed. Dad this time. I let it ring. Then Brandon. Then Mom again calling from a different number. I turned my phone off and sat there as the afternoon light shifted, golden and slanting through the trees. Students walked past, stressed about midterms, excited about weekend plans, living their complicated normal lives. I thought about Grandma. How she'd worked as an engineer in the 1960s when women in the field were rare enough to make the newspapers. How she'd saved and invested and built something real. How she'd sat me down when I was 17 and said, "Katie, I'm leaving this to you because I know you won't waste it. And I know you won't let anyone make you feel guilty for having it." She'd known. Of course she'd known. I turned my phone back on. 37 missed calls. 16 voicemails. 43 texts. I deleted them all without reading or listening. Then I opened my contacts and scrolled to Mom's number. Hit the block button. Dead. Block. Brandon. Block. Then I called the university's legal department back. "Hi, this is Catherine Shaw. We spoke earlier. I need to add something to my statement. I'd like to pursue full legal action against my mother for identity fraud, attempted unauthorized access to educational records, and any other applicable charges. I'll cooperate fully with the investigation." The attorney's voice was professionally neutral, but I heard the approval underneath. "We'll file with campus police immediately. They'll coordinate with local authorities. You should also consider a restraining order." "I will. Thank you." That evening I met with campus police. Made a formal statement. Signed documents. The officer, an older woman with kind eyes, said she'd seen this before. Parents who couldn't accept their adult children's autonomy. It happened more than people realized. "You're doing the right thing," she told me. "Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary." I nodded. Felt the truth of it settle into my bones. 3 days later I received an email from the dean. The university was pursuing criminal charges. My academic records were now sealed at the highest level, Fort Knox as Mrs. Henderson put it. And they wanted to discuss expanding my scholarship fund if I was interested. I was. 2 weeks after that, campus police served my mother with a no trespass order and formal charges for identity fraud and computer crimes. She'd accessed the student portal using old information and falsified medical documents. Dad called from a number I hadn't blocked yet, screaming about embarrassment and ingratitude. I hung up. Blocked that number too. Brandon sent a long email about family loyalty and how I was tearing everyone apart. He said Mom was devastated. That Dad wasn't sleeping. That I was selfish and cold and everything wrong with this generation. I didn't respond. But I did screenshot it and send it to my attorney. Documentation, she said, was important. 4 months later, I'm sitting in the Shaw Engineering Building's top-floor study lounge. It's midnight. Campus is quiet. Through the window I can see the lights of the city stretching out. Thousands of lives, each one a story I'll never know. My thesis defense is in 2 weeks. I've already accepted a position at Lockheed Martin starting after graduation. The scholarship fund I expanded now supports 8 students. First generation, just like Grandma was. Just like I am, really, in the ways that count. Mom's criminal trial is scheduled for next month. The prosecutor says it's a strong case. She created false documents, impersonated me, attempted to access protected records. Dad hired a lawyer to try to make it go away. The lawyer told him that's not how felonies work. I haven't spoken to any of them since that day in October. I blocked their numbers, their emails, their social media. I built a wall, not out of anger but out of architecture. Clean lines. Load-bearing. Permanent. Sometimes I think about the alternate version of my life. The one where I let Mom withdraw me. Where I went home, did Brandon's bookkeeping, made myself small and useful and disappeared into the service of people who confused love with extraction. That version of Catherine is a ghost. She haunts me sometimes, usually at 2 a.m. when I'm deep in research and questioning everything. But then I remember, ghosts aren't real. They're just stories we tell ourselves about roads not taken. I chose this road. I chose the one that hurt at first but led somewhere I wanted to go. Grandma used to say that engineering is about understanding load and stress, knowing what structures can bear and what breaks them. She meant buildings, but she also didn't. I've learned my load capacity. I know exactly how much I can carry and what happens when I exceed it. The relationship with my parents exceeded it. So I removed the load. The building is still standing. My phone sits face down on the desk, silent. The thermodynamics textbook is open to chapter 17. Outside, snow has started to fall. The first of the season, soft and quiet. They wanted to control my education, my future, my freedom. They thought the university would comply because parents always get their way, especially when they invoke mental health and family crisis. They forgot something important, though. I'm not the struggling student they imagined. I'm not the resource they decided I should be. I'm the person who wrote the check that built this building. I'm the engineer who's going to design systems that matter. I'm the granddaughter who honored a legacy by refusing to let anyone diminish it. The dean's assistant was right about one thing. I did handle it with composure. But what she didn't see, what they never see until it's too late, is that composure isn't passivity. It's precision. And I've learned from the best that precision applied correctly can move mountains. Or in this case, remove them entirely from your life. The scholarship fund will outlive me. The building will stand for decades. 8 students are getting educations they couldn't otherwise afford. Mom is facing felony charges and a permanent criminal record. The math is simple, really. You can't withdraw someone who's already arrived.
They didn't pack a suitcase. That's the part that comes back first. No overnight bag, no duffel, not even my toothbrush, just my hoodie tied around my waist and my tablet clutched to my chest like it could explain everything they wouldn't say. We pulled up to Grandma Millie's house just past lunch. The sky was too blue, like it didn't get the memo that something irreversible was about to happen. Dad turned down the radio mid-song, a country ballad about coming home. I still remember the way he said it, too. Casual, too light. We'll be right back. I blinked at him from the back seat. Already halfway out the car, Mom turned around in the passenger seat and gave me this tight smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Go on, sweetie, Grandma's waiting. Except she wasn't. Grandma opened the door with a plastic cup of iced tea in her hand, her reading glasses still sitting low on her nose. Millie, Dad said, like they were dropping by for a barbecue. She looked from him to me and back again. That pause, that beat of surprise, was enough to tell me she hadn't known. Still, she didn't ask questions. She just moved aside and let me walk in. The screen door squeaked shut behind me. I stood in the middle of her entryway, the air smelling like pine sol and something stewed too long. My sneakers squeaked on the linoleum. Just running some errands, Mom called from outside, already halfway down the porch steps. Be good, honey. And then the car pulled away. I stood on the porch and watched until the red taillights faded behind the curve of sycamore trees. I kept watching for a while after, just in case they came back. They didn't. The day moved on without them. Grandma offered me a tuna sandwich. I wasn't hungry. She didn't push. Instead, she went back to her crossword puzzle, tapping her pencil like a metronome. I sat on the edge of the couch, swinging my legs, still waiting for the sound of tires on gravel. She showed me the guest room before sunset. It wasn't really a room, more like a corner of the house that used to store old wrapping paper and puzzles with missing pieces. There was a twin bed against one wall covered in a quilt that smelled faintly of mothballs and peppermint. No toothbrush, she asked, half a glance in my direction. I shook my head. She sighed, rubbed her temple, and walked down the hall without saying anything else. A few minutes later, she came back with a travel-sized toothpaste and a brush in plastic wrap. It's one of the ones they give you at the dentist, she muttered. I nodded like I understood everything, like I was fine. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, its slow rotation humming like a tired lullaby. The corners of the room were dark, unfamiliar. Somewhere down the hall, Grandma coughed, turned over in her creaky bed. I heard the house settle pipes clicking in the walls like they were keeping secrets. She had said it just before turning out the light. They'll be back any day now. But she didn't look me in the eye when she said it, and I knew in a way, you don't need grown-up words for that. No one was coming through that door. The ceiling fan kept spinning. My tablet buzzed once. Low, battery warning, I didn't plug it in. I just watched the blades go round and round until I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming. They said they'd be right back. They said so. At school, I told people my parents had to travel for work. California sounded believable, big enough to feel far away, vague enough that no one would ask for specifics. I said it with a smile, which made it easier to swallow for them anyway. No one challenged me. Not really. One teacher, Mrs. Kenner, gave me that look during roll call the first week like she was waiting for me to say more. But when I didn't, she just nodded and handed me a reading log like the conversation had never happened. Kids asked things, of course. Who picks you up? Where do you live now? I always said with my grandma just for a while and tried to change the subject. Sydney Collins, who sat behind me in science and chewed on her eraser, was the nosiest. She kept saying we should have a sleepover or that her mom could drive me home after school if my parents were super busy. I remember one day in October when she pressed too hard. "Don't you miss them?" she asked during lunch. I was peeling a hard-boiled egg. I stared at the white rubbery surface for a long time before answering. "They call a lot," I said, which wasn't true, but it wasn't a full lie either. I mean, they could have called. That fall, Grandma got me a new lunchbox, bright purple with cartoon puppies on the front. She said it was the only one left at Walgreens, like that made it better. I didn't say anything, just packed it every morning with a peanut butter sandwich and an apple. I always ate fast, careful not to let anyone see the inside flap where Grandma had written Millie H. in faded black marker. It was hers, not mine. Like most things, some days I'd watch the sidewalk from the classroom window. While the teacher droned on about decimals, I'd imagine a silver sedan pulling into the parking lot. My mom in her sunglasses, my dad waving like everything was normal. I pictured them standing at the office with a smile that said, "We're here now." But the bell always rang, and it was always Grandma waiting at the curb, arms crossed, engine running. One afternoon, I found her sitting in the kitchen with a letter in her lap. Her mouth was tight. The envelope was open, but she hadn't taken the card out yet. She slid it across the table without a word. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Rounded letters, little hearts above the eyes, inside. "Hope you're well. Love. Mom and Dad. No date. No return address." I nodded, slid it back across the table, and went to do my math homework. That night, I woke up to the sound of her voice. The hallway was dark, the air thick with the smell of fried onions from dinner. I crept closer to her bedroom door. "She's asking about you," Grandma said. Pause. "I know. But she's your kid." I didn't hear the rest. Just that. Just enough. The next day, I tore a page out of the notebook where I'd been writing all the things I thought we'd do when they came back. Go to the movies. Get matching pajamas at Target. Buy Halloween candy together. I took it behind the garage after school and lit it with a match from the kitchen drawer. It burned too fast. By the time it turned to ash, I didn't feel lighter, just a little more quiet. I stopped marking birthdays after 13, not out of protest, just because no one else seemed to notice. I got the usual card from Mom and Dad in the mail, same as always, neatly folded, signed, "Love you always," with a $20 bill tucked inside, like it made up for anything. I didn't even open the envelope that year. Just slipped it into the drawer under my socks and forgot about it. By then, I had learned not to expect much. Grandma Millie was slowing down. She never said it outright, but I could see it in the way she held the banister a little tighter each time she climbed the stairs. She'd forget what day it was or whether the oven was still on. Once she called me by my mother's name. I didn't correct her. I just brought her some water and sat beside her on the couch until she dozed off. At school, I kept to myself. I wasn't unfriendly, just unavailable. I did my work. I turned in essays. I skipped homecoming and told people I had the flu. I didn't. I just didn't want to sit in a gym filled with rented tuxedos and floral corsages while thinking about the dresses I'd never get to show my mom. Instead, I stayed home and fixed the leaking bathroom faucet. Took me 4 YouTube videos and a full afternoon, but I did it. The drip stopped. It felt like winning something that became my thing, fixing things. Lamps stuck drawers, the busted heater in the laundry room. Grandma started saying I had a good hand, like her father used to. I started keeping a little notebook of what needed repairs and crossed things off one by one. It made me feel like I had some control over something. Aunt Cheryl began stopping by more often. She'd bring over frozen casseroles and cluck about the state of the porch steps. Sometimes she offered to take me for the weekend, but it always sounded like she was offering out of obligation, not desire. I always declined. I didn't need another house where I didn't belong. Her daughter Hannah once asked why I never posted any family photos on Facebook. I shrugged and said I wasn't that into social media, which was half true. The other half was harder to explain. Every so often another envelope would arrive in the mail. Different handwriting, but the same tone. Hope school is going well. We're thinking of you. Love, Mom and Dad. I started tossing them unopened. I could tell which ones were theirs by the weight and the postmark. At 17, I went to parent-teacher night alone. I walked the halls, sat through the speeches, shook hands with teachers who nodded too gently and offered too many smiles. When I left, the parking lot was full of taillights, car doors slamming, kids waving from windows. I walked home. It was cool that night, the kind of fall air that smells like damp leaves and faint wood smoke. I sat on the porch steps and pulled my knees to my chest. The porch light flickered. I didn't move to fix it. I whispered into the dark, just loud enough for no one to hear. They're not lost. They're just not looking. Grandma Millie died on a Tuesday. I remember the rain more than the moment. It wasn't dramatic, just steady like even the sky couldn't quite cry about it, just quietly gave in. We were in her room when it happened. She was in her faded nightgown with the blue lilacs, one she refused to throw out, even after the hem frayed. She mumbled something I didn't catch, and then just exhaled. I sat there for a long time after holding her hand, long after it stopped being warm. The TV was still playing an old detective rerun in the background. The detective never figured out who did it. The funeral came quickly, the way small-town funerals do. The Rockfield Baptist Church smelled like lemon oil and old hymnals I ordered white lilies printed. The programs chose a photo where Grandma was smiling but still looked like herself. Aunt Cheryl helped with the cookies, and Hannah posted on Facebook, "Celebrating a life well lived. Rest easy. Grandma Millie." The service had already started when I saw them, Linda and Bruce. My parents slipped into the back row like ghosts. Mom wore a gray shawl, her eyes too wide, her mouth trembling just enough to seem genuine. Dad kept adjusting his collar like the shirt was choking him. Neither of them looked at me at first. It was like they didn't know how. After the final hymn, people moved toward the fellowship hall for lemon bars and dry sandwiches. I stayed near the back pew, not ready to mingle. That's when she came over. "Natalie," Mom said, voice soft and sticky. I didn't answer. She leaned in for a hug. I stepped back. Her arms froze mid-air. She let them drop slowly. Dad gave a helpless sort of shrug, the kind people use when they've run out of rehearsed lines. "You look well," he said. "Please don't," I replied. My voice was calm. That surprised me. People noticed Aunt Cheryl's jaw tightened. One of the church ladies looked away, pretending to fuss with the punch bowl. After a moment, Mom tried again. "We've missed you. We've thought about you every day. You just didn't show up for any of them," I said. I expected her to cry. She didn't. She just blinked, then looked at her shoes. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. "We should talk," he said. "Maybe not here." Why, I asked. "So you can feel better?" Neither answered. The sympathy card they gave me was blank inside. Not even a line. Just my name and a signature, like I was someone they barely remembered. I carried it in my coat pocket as I walked out into the drizzle. The air smelled like wet gravel and regret. Aunt Cheryl caught up to me on the sidewalk, umbrella in hand. She didn't say anything, just held it over both of us until we reached her car. She squeezed my shoulder before I left. "You handled that better than most grown women would have." I didn't feel grown. I felt like a child again, except this time I wasn't waiting for the car to come back. I was watching it pull in 10 years too late. They kept texting after the funeral, once a week at first. Then every few days, Mom would sign off every message with love. "You always," like she hadn't spent the last decade proving otherwise. Dad's were shorter. "We should talk. You're old enough now. Let's sit down." I didn't respond. But silence, I've learned, only makes some people talk louder. Eventually, I gave in. 1 hour, public place. No surprises. We met at the Denny's off I-94, the one next to the gas station with flickering lights and a rusting ice machine. I got there early. Chose the booth by the window, ordered black coffee I didn't plan to drink. They were 5 minutes late. Mom walked in first, wearing a floral blouse. I'm pretty sure she'd worn in one of my childhood photos. Dad followed, still tugging at that same frayed polo collar like it hadn't fit him in years. "Sweetheart," Mom said, sliding into the seat across from me. I didn't say anything, just stared at the plastic placemat laminated and sticky around the edges. Dad sat across from me, clearing his throat. "You look good." I nodded once. The waitress came. I declined food, so did they. We just wanted to reconnect. Mom began folding her hands like we were praying. "Things were really hard back then. We were so young." "You were 35, I said. She blinked. Dad leaned in. "We were struggling. Nat, fighting broke. Grandma said she could help." "She did," I said evenly. "You didn't." He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he picked up the menu and stared at it without reading a word. Mom tried again. "We made mistakes, but we thought you'd be better with her. We weren't ready to be the kind of parents you needed. You weren't ready to be parents at all," I said sharper than I meant. "So you left me on her doorstep like a delivery." "I wrote," she offered, like it counted. "I sent cards." "Cards," I echoed, with $20 and no return address. The silence between us swelled full of everything they couldn't say and everything I no longer needed to hear. Dad finally looked up. "You can't just erase us." I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. "You did it first." He exhaled hard through his nose like that was the worst thing anyone had ever said to him. The waitress came back, asked if we needed anything. We all said no. I almost laughed. We needed so much, but none of it was on the menu. "I still think about you," Mom whispered, eyes shiny. Every day I stood up, pulled a $5 bill from my wallet and slid it under my untouched mug. "This is all I owe you." I didn't look back as I walked out. The bell above the door jingled once cheerful and misplaced. Outside, the wind had picked up. I zipped my jacket and kept walking not toward a car, but toward the version of myself that no longer needed to explain why I wasn't willing to forgive people who had only returned once it was convenient. Some folks call that bitterness. I call it memory. The letters didn't stop. Neither did the voicemails, though. I stopped listening to those after Christmas. Sometimes they came with apologies, sometimes just lines like, "Hope you're doing okay," or "We miss you." They always ended with some version of, "Can we talk?" The truth is we already had. At that booth. In that silence, I didn't need more talking. I needed space. Grandma's house was mine now, but it didn't feel like it right away. I kept the furniture where it had always been, like moving. Anything would make it harder to remember her. But over time, I started repainting things. Soft grays, sage green in the kitchen, a light yellow in the room that used to be hers. I made the front porch safer, fixed the steps she always tripped over, rewired the lamp that used to flicker near the couch. Every small repair felt like a conversation we never got to finish. Aunt Cheryl still dropped off groceries. Sometimes she lingered with her arms crossed, saying things like, "They're still your parents," or, "It's not too late." I'd just nod and change the subject. She meant well, but meaning well doesn't mean you're right. I spent more time alone that year, but it wasn't the lonely kind. I read more. Started baking, made a list of bills and paid them on time. I planted basil in a cracked pot by the windowsill and started drinking tea instead of coffee. One Saturday, I found a new letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. "We're getting older. We don't want to leave this world without knowing you again. Please, Natalie. We're sorry I didn't cry." I folded the letter once, then again, and slipped it into the drawer where I'd been keeping every unopened card since I was 11. The top one still had glitter on the envelope. A birthday card from when I turned 15. I never opened that one either. Later that evening, I stepped out back. The air was cool, but not cold. I lit the fire pit and sat on one of the patio chairs I'd inherited from Cheryl's garage sale. On my lap was a notebook I hadn't touched in years, the one where I used to write things they'd do when they came back. Take me to Dairy Queen. Buy matching pajamas. Ask how I slept. I tore the pages out one by one, feeding them to the flame. The paper curled fast, turned black at the edges, then disappeared. I didn't do it out of anger. There was nothing left to burn in that regard. It was just time. Inside the house was warm, familiar mine. I brewed tea and sat by the window listening to the quiet. No TV, no phone. Just the sound of the heater kicking on and the slow ticking of the kitchen clock. Some people think closure comes from conversation. I think it comes from a door you choose not to reopen. They said they'd be right back. They weren't. I was. I wasn't supposed to be here. The sky over Ohio had that bleak pewter tone. It gets in late winter, like the whole world had been dulled by grief. I pulled into the hospital parking lot and sat for a long moment with my fingers still wrapped tight around the steering wheel. In my passenger seat, a manila folder filled with paperwork. Insurance ID numbers, emergency contact forms. A list of medications I'd updated last month. Forms for the 2 people who once called me their daughter. The automatic doors opened with a mechanical hiss, letting in a gust of cold air and the antiseptic sting of disinfectant. At the reception desk, a nurse flipped through a clipboard and said, "Room 4. They're stable, but we need someone to sign for decisions." She didn't ask who I was. My name was on the records. That had always been the irony. I knocked once out of habit before stepping inside. The room was quiet except for the low hum of machines and the gentle beep of a heart monitor. My mother lay in the bed nearest the door, looking smaller than I remembered. She stirred at the sound of my steps and opened her eyes. It took her 3 seconds to place me, then her brow furrowed. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" She said it like I was a stranger who'd wandered in by mistake. I didn't answer right away. My eyes moved to the other bed. My father, unconscious, pale, hooked to a line of IVs. His face had aged in ways I wasn't ready to see. I placed the folder on the small side table between their beds. My voice, when it came, was steady. "The hospital called. I'm still listed as your emergency contact." I watched her process that. No apology, no gratitude. Just confusion. Like it hadn't occurred to her. I would still be reachable. I took one step closer, then another, until I could see the line of stitches near her temple. Her voice was weak, but mine wasn't. "The last time I heard from either of you was 3 years ago, the day I got married." She looked away. I didn't stop. "You emailed me that morning, said you had a terrible migraine and couldn't get out of bed. You didn't call, you didn't ask how it went. No card, no explanation." I waited a beat, then added quieter. "This time, I've always wondered, how long did that headache last, because you never brought it up again?" She didn't respond, just closed her eyes like she could will me out of the room. So I moved back to the table, opened the folder, and pulled out the documents. Insurance coverage billing details, treatment authorizations. I signed where they needed signatures, updated her prescription history, and checked the consent form. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here because I'm still listed in your file. That's all." Then I paused, looking back once before heading for the door. "Don't worry, I won't be staying long," and I left the manila folder neatly closed behind me. Outside the room, the hallway felt colder, but not because of the weather, because I knew I wasn't supposed to be here. Not in their eyes, not after the way they'd erased me. And yet when they needed someone, anyone, I was still the name they'd left behind. They chose someone else instead of me. A week before my wedding, I called my mother. I still remember how hopeful I sounded, like a kid inviting her parents to the school play. I was standing in the small bedroom I shared with Malik in our Columbus apartment, the dress hanging from the closet door behind me. I could barely contain my excitement. "Mom," I said, practically glowing through the phone. "The dress just came back from alterations. It's simple, but I think you'll really like it. Malik and I picked out a spot right near the rose trellis in Sarah's backyard. It's going to be small, but—" Silence on the other end. I kept going, fumbling to fill the space. "We made sure to save seats up front just for you and Dad. I know it's short notice, but it would mean the world if you were there." She paused, then answered with a voice so neutral it chilled me. "It's a busy time of year, Rachel. There's church planning and the Women's Fellowship has 2 big events coming up." "But you got the invitation right?" I asked, still pretending not to hear what she was really saying. "I mailed it a month ago." "Yes, I received it," she said. That was it. That was all she said. I hung up a few minutes later, her voice still stuck in my ear like a cold wind. "No, I'm happy for you. No, congratulations." Just a quiet closing door. Still, I held on to a thread of hope. The night before the wedding, I placed a small gift in a white box, a hand-carved wooden picture frame etched with the words, "Mom and Dad, thank you for walking me to this day." I'd planned to hand it to them after the ceremony. That box never left my apartment. It's still there. On the shelf in the corner, collecting dust. The wedding day was beautiful in its own quiet way. Malik looked at me like I was made of light, friends cried. There was dancing under string lights and a homemade cake that leaned a little too far to the left. But there were no parents in the front row. No one to say, "That's our daughter." 2 weeks later, I posted a single photo to Facebook. Me and Malik laughing as we cut the cake. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't write a long caption. Just one word. Married, finally. That same evening, my mother called. It was the first time I'd heard her voice since the invitation. She didn't congratulate me, didn't ask how the day went. She just said, "You really thought that was a wedding?" Then I heard my father's voice in the background, dry and amused. "We expected better from you." I didn't say anything. I just listened, and in that moment it hit me. They hadn't simply skipped the ceremony. They had erased it. Erased me. I didn't seek revenge. I just disappeared. After that call, I didn't block their number. I didn't post cryptic quotes or burn bridges in dramatic fashion. I just stepped back. I stopped sending holiday cards, stopped checking if they'd finally liked one of my posts, stopped hoping, but I didn't sever everything. Their Medicare plans were still tied to the insurance group I managed through my job. A quiet favor I'd never explained to anyone, not even Malik. When the pharmacy called about a refill for my father's blood pressure meds, I handled it like any other case, efficient, distant. Malik noticed the tension one night when I was answering emails after dinner. He leaned against the kitchen counter, drying a mug. "You still managing their records?" I didn't look up. If I remove myself the copay resets, they'd lose access to the low-income subsidies. He set the mug down and walked over, resting his hands gently on my shoulders. "You don't owe them that." I finally met his eyes. I made a promise to my grandmother before she passed. She said no matter what happens, blood stays blood, even when it's thin. He didn't argue, he just nodded, kissed my forehead, and went to lock up for the night. Later in bed, I stared at the ceiling while the neighborhood dog barked somewhere down the block. What I felt wasn't exactly love. Not anymore. It was closer to duty, or memory, or something in between. Because even when your parents don't show up to your wedding, don't even call you daughter anymore, something in you still remembers how they once packed your lunch, or the way your mother hummed hymns while folding laundry on Sundays. You don't forget. You just live beside it. So I kept the lights on behind the scenes, paid quietly when gaps in coverage showed up on their medical statements, updated addresses when hospital systems tried to send bills to the wrong place, never signed my name, never asked for thanks. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't weakness. It was survival, layered with something softer. A year passed like that. Then 2. Every so often, Malik would glance at me when we got insurance mail with their names on it, his expression somewhere between concern and awe. "You're the only person I know," he said once, "who helps people who pretend you don't exist." I smiled, but not because it felt good. "They can forget me all they want," I said, "but I remember me. I wasn't invited, but they couldn't stop me." The next time I saw them face to face was when the hospital called again. A car accident minor, they said, but both were admitted overnight for observation. I was still listed as their emergency contact. That detail hadn't changed. Not because they'd chosen to leave me there, but because I suspected they'd simply forgotten to remove me. I didn't rush. I drove the hour to the hospital after my shift ended parked and sat in the lot until the sun dipped low enough to shadow the entrance. This wasn't a visit. It was a notification. I stepped inside, filed the necessary paperwork at the nurse's station, and asked to update their files with current insurance information. Routine, mechanical. But I'd brought something else with me, not out of sentiment but for clarity. A sealed envelope. Inside was a copy of my marriage license, the one I'd kept tucked in the back of my desk drawer for 3 years, signed by the Justice of the Peace, dated and stamped, under witnesses. A blank space, under family, present. None recorded. I included a short administrative note. For record keeping, patient's emergency contact is legally married. Family not present at time of ceremony. I handed it to the desk clerk. She glanced at the label and nodded. "I'll add this to their profile," she said. "Anything else you'd like us to include?" I shook my head. "No, that's all they need." The nurse on duty walked me down the hallway to the room. My parents were both awake this time, sitting up and alert. The lighting was soft, like the kind they use to make bad news easier to absorb. My mother's face paled the moment she saw me. My father blinked once, uncertain if I was real or part of some post-accident haze. I didn't sit down. I didn't touch them. I looked directly at my mother, her hands clasped tightly over her lap. "Insurance is handled. They'll release you tomorrow." My father cleared his throat. "Rachel, we didn't expect." "I know," I said. "You didn't invite me." Silence. "I'm not here to talk. I'm not here to fight. I'm just here to finish what's expected of me." I stepped back toward the door, pausing only once. But for what it's worth, I brought documentation, so that next time someone asks who showed up, the answer will be simple. My mother's jaw clenched. My father looked away, and I left. I didn't need to win. I just needed them to stop pretending. 2 weeks after I dropped off the updated records, the phone calls started. At first, it was the hospital billing office, then the social worker from the county. Finally, someone from the Medicare appeals line called my office. We've received notification that the primary care contact has been removed from both patient files. Are you able to verify this, Ms. Carter? Yes, I said. I'm no longer responsible. I could hear the hesitation in her voice. The patients seem surprised I'm not, I said and hung up. That same evening, my phone buzzed again. Margaret Carter, mobile. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. I barely got the word hello out before her voice tore through the speaker. You ungrateful little bitch. Are you trying to destroy us? Is that what this is? After everything we've done for you. Her voice was shrill, unfamiliar, and yet perfectly recognizable. We gave you a roof, food, clothes, a Christian upbringing, and this is how you repay us. In the background, I heard my father's voice, low, desperate. Rachel, please, think about what you're doing. You're pushing us over the edge. We're not young anymore. I took a breath, cold and steady. I thought about it for 3 years. Then I clicked end call. The next day, a letter came in the mail. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. My father's shaky, uneven. The kind of script that used to appear on birthday cards when I was little. I opened it slowly. Inside one page, creased down the middle. Rachel, I don't know if you'll read this, but I hope you will. Your mother is angry. Yes, but she's scared, so am I. You were always the steady one, the strong one. I know we weren't what you needed, and I know we should have been there for your wedding. That was wrong. I won't make excuses. But we are old now. We don't have much. The insurance changes, the tax reviews. It's too much. Please don't cut us off completely. Even if we never make it right, don't let us disappear like this. Dad, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer marked keep but not close. Then I opened my inbox and drafted an email. No salutation. No closing. Just one attachment, a voice recording. I'd saved years ago. One of many. The subject line read, "For your records, R.C." In the recording, my voice is calm, collected. I still remember the day I won first place in the art contest. I was 8. I ran all the way home with the ribbon in my hand and the drawing crinkled in my backpack. I wanted to show you both of you, but when I walked in, you were in the middle of a fight. Dad, you knocked the paper out of my hand. Mom, you told me to go to my room. That was the first time I learned what it meant to be invisible. The audio ends there. No outro, no signature, just silence. And then I hit send. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I just needed them to remember I existed. I didn't check to see if they replied to the email. I didn't refresh the inbox or keep my phone by my side. I'd said everything I needed to say without saying it to their faces, and that silence was more honest than anything they'd ever given me. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, my body heavy but still. Malik came in from the hallway, pausing in the doorway as he took one look at my face. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't offer words. He just crossed the room, sat beside me, and wrapped both arms around my shoulders. No advice. No questions. Just warmth. Just presence. And in that stillness, I let myself exhale. I didn't want them to say sorry. I said almost a whisper. I just wanted them to stop pretending like I was never there. Malik nodded, resting his chin lightly against my hair. Now they know, he said. The next morning, I opened the filing cabinet in the corner of my office. A slim drawer marked family, medical, legal inside were records I'd kept out of obligation, not connection. Emergency contact forms, prescription schedules, copies of hospital authorizations, old insurance statements with my signature on the bottom line. All of it. I took out the folder labeled Carter, Parents. I reviewed every page. I shredded what I could, transferred the rest to the hospital system with a simple note, no longer authorized, and then I locked the drawer. I didn't slam it, I didn't cry, I just closed it. A week later, Malik and I walked past the dusty frame on the hallway shelf, the one I'd once meant to give my parents on my wedding day. It had sat untouched for years, Mom and Dad. Thank you for walking me to this day. They hadn't walked me anywhere. Malik picked it up, examined it for a long moment. What do you want to do with this? I took it from him, ran a thumb over the engraved letters, then set it gently in the donation box by the door. Let someone else use it, I said. Someone who still believes it. Later that evening while making dinner, my phone buzzed. Blocked number, I let it ring, then ring again and stop. No voicemail. Just the kind of silence that feels like the final act of something long overdue. Afterward, Malik and I sat down to eat. The table wasn't fancy, the chairs didn't match, but the room was full of peace. He reached for my hand. "What now?" he asked. I smiled, not out of joy, but from relief. "Now I live," I said, fully, without asking to be seen. Outside, the sky had softened to a warm gray. Quiet, but not empty. A sky that didn't owe anyone light. I didn't share this story to be pitied. I shared it because some of you, maybe too many of you, know what it feels like to be erased by the people who raised you, to carry love that was never returned, and to let go without ever hearing the words you deserved. I'm not here to say I healed. I'm here to say I remembered myself, and that was enough. If this story reminded you of something you've never said out loud, tell us, or just let it sit with you, and if you're still watching, thank you, you saw me. Maybe you saw yourself too.